Welcome back to Empowered and Out, the podcast where we talk about what it really takes to thrive as your authentic self in your career and life. I'm Jonathan, your host, and today I'm joined by Manuel, a queer academic and marketer originally from Italy, now based in the UK. With a background in psychology, communications, and events, Manuel has dedicated his research to understanding how media shapes self perception among queer men. His work digs into age identity, the dual stigma of ageism and heterosexism, and the mental health impact of these pressures on our community. He also brings a personal touch to his research, using his own lived experiences to make sense of complex social data. Beyond academia, Manuel runs Mava, a freelance communications and events practice, and he's even exploring how this work might expand into the wedding industry. I'm very excited for this conversation. It's one that challenges how we think about ourselves, our age, and the stories we're told about what it means to grow older and queer. Manuel, welcome to Empowered and Out. I am so glad you're here.
Thank you. I'm really happy to be here.
So, let's just dive in. So, your research looks at how media influences self perception among queer men. From your perspective, why does media have such a powerful impact on the way that we see ourselves?
So nowadays, media are what we consume. We are consistently exposed to video ads, billboards, TV, film, and so on. And while on the one hand, these media representations are a reflection of the culture and the society we live in, on the other hand, they also produce it. And for minorities like queer men, we grew up without having many representations of ourselves. So media become a key site for imagining and negotiating our identity. So the bodies and the behaviors that we see portrayed in the media serve as a mirror that does not necessarily reflect the reality we are in, but it is a bit more fragmented and it is distorted by the stereotypes and the norms that affect our society. So we end up internalizing these images as sort of scripts of how we are supposed to look, how we're supposed to behave, and how we are supposed to age as well. And when these scripts are very narrow, when the stereotypes are quite intense and strict, the impact on self perception is mostly profound.
Very interesting. It's so true. Like, I just knowing all the different types of things that I've seen in media, I mean, from movies, television, whatever it might be, to think, oh, especially as a queer man, like going, oh, am I supposed to be like that? Am I supposed to be like this? Oh, this, or flipping it, this is how I'm supposed to be. This is how I'm supposed to, present myself. And it's definitely not, first off, we have to be ourselves. It's great
Yeah,
that, the media shows, how we should or shouldn't be. But when it really comes down to it, we just need to be ourselves, just plain and
exactly.
simple.
Yeah.
And when we're not, I feel that that's when our challenges come around. That's when we question everything if we're trying to be like a certain person or a character or whatever that might be, because then we have the questions, but then if we're not acting like it or people question, I think that comes down to authenticity, that we're not being our authentic self. And I think when we're not
Yeah.
our authentic self, it's where it covers all bases of our life. It's going to affect your relationships. It's going to affect your relationship being with family, friends, whoever, that work environment, whatever that might be. So,
No, absolutely. What I found most interesting is I fully agree, like we just have to be ourselves, but sometimes we question who we are as well. And that's one of the elements that I've been researching identity formation and how fluid it is and how it changes throughout the life course. And it's very interesting because like think about like what you call it, like the midlife crisis, like things like that. Obviously, they're very exaggerated, like in movies and TVs and so on, but they're real. Like we do have this little identity crisis sometimes, because we do start to question who we are. Like, is our identity determined by just our thoughts? Is it the people that surround us? And it's very interesting to see that it is actually an interplay of all the influences and all the thoughts and all the behaviors that we have inside ourselves as well, that create our identity. And it's okay to accept also that our identity can change.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I mean, I can say, I don't know if you and I had talked about this before, but I know when I was your age, I am not the same person. I'm not the same, you know, queer man that I was back then. I'm a completely different person. Yes, I like some of
Yeah.
the same things, but a lot of, for me personally, I was trying to be something, honestly, I was trying to be something that I wasn't. I was just trying to fit in. And as I got older and, um, to put it good or bad, into the midlife where I am now, I just realized being my more authentic, true self and really being more comfortable in my skin is what's more important than trying to be something I'm not.
Yeah. That's it there. Like it's about being as authentic as we can be with all the changes and with everything that it entails. And sometimes it's difficult to admit when we are struggling in expressing our identity as well. But at the end of the day, it's just about being as authentic as we can be.
Yeah, so you talk about chronolog I can't even say it. Chronological age versus age identity. What does that mean and how do queer men experience that difference in real life?
So chronological age is a matter of fact. It's the time that has passed since birth. So it's your demographic age, let's say. Age identity offers a more fluid perspective. So it's a term that encapsulates the way age is expressed through feelings, through behaviors, through thoughts, and through looks as well. Um, and what I like the most in my research is that age identity is self perceived. So only our own thoughts and our own behaviors can affect age identity, even though sometimes these are influenced by external factors, by other people as well. And what I found most interesting is that when I was younger, I always felt like I was a little bit ahead of my age. And so these allowed me to appreciate, like from an early start, that age identity was fluid, but I thought it was static, meaning that I thought that for all of my life, I would feel a little bit ahead of my age. And then
Uh-huh.
with time and with research, I started to appreciate that there is actually dynamic nature to age identity, and it is not so static. Like it's fluid, yes, but it also shifts. So maybe today I will look slightly younger than my chronological age. Maybe tomorrow I will feel slightly older, and in between I will try to act according to my chronological age. So that's what I particularly liked. And everyone, consciously or not consciously, experiences their age differently, but when you start to group people based on certain criteria or certain specifications, you start to notice some similarities as well. So a very simple and common example is generations. So if
Uh-huh.
you group people based on their generational cohort, so let's say millennials, um, you do expect them to experience their own age differently, but you also expect them to share some similarities in the way they express or perceive or portray their age. And this is due to social, cultural context, or some environmental factors of the specific time they grew up in. And I applied this to queer men in my research because if we start to look at queer men specifically, we also have some shared experiences in our life, like milestones, for example, like coming out, or even experiences of discrimination that
Uh-huh.
like the heterosexual counterpart does not necessarily go through in their life. So that's what I thought was mostly interesting. And going back to the media representations we were talking about earlier, for example, queer men are often portrayed as in the media as young and slim and attractive. So as we age, we start to think, oh, if I look older, I do not fit into this community anymore. So I don't fit into that specific group anymore. And there is a clash in our identities. And so we try to rectify this clash. And for example, some people might join the gym to feel like they're a bit fitter. Other people go through procedures like Botox or hair transplants. And everything is valid. But this leads to that thought of, oh, if I feel younger, if I look younger, maybe I still am part of that community. So it's just a continuous negotiation of influences and negotiation of our own identities and trying to understand where we sit in society.
Interesting. Yeah, I agree. It's very, I do believe, as I like the difference because I do believe that as we get older, I mean, I definitely at one point was joining the gym to make sure, I will admit, I use skincare. I take care of my skin. I'm always using sunscreen. Whenever I go outside, I even use um, something as simple as a moisturizer that has blue light protection because we're in front of blue light like uh, now with everything we do. It seems like
Yeah.
from our phones, from our computers, from our television. So yeah, I mean, it's very interesting because it does. I would say it's definitely probably more. I wouldn't say I wouldn't say it's more prevalent in the queer community, but overall, because I feel like as we age, you see that like you'll see possibly work done, Botox, whatever, even in straight heterosexual men. Women
Absolutely.
do
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
thing, and women do the same thing. They might say, "Oh, my breasts aren't big enough, so I need bigger breasts," or I need to have this wrinkle taken out. They'll do so but it's interesting because I think um, it's across the board. Um, so I think we all go through it, but I
Yeah.
really do kind of feel it might come across maybe a little bit stronger in the queer community, just because
Yeah.
it is. I think that how we kind of perceive ourselves, but also how we might find a partner, a boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever that might be. We do, of course, look. It is. I hate to say it, but it is about the looks. I mean, it
It
might
is.
be when
Yeah.
you first meet someone. So, and that goes. I mean, but that also works for both. But I think that we might look at it maybe a little bit more intensely. Um,
Something that I found that was very interesting when I was doing my research was masculinity, like the concept of masculinity, because I started, so there's not much research on self-perceived age among gay men. Most of the research is on general cohorts, so they don't describe sexuality, but from what you read, you kind of understand that they just assume that everyone is straight. Um, it was very interesting to see a specific study that was looking at self-perceived age and representations of how people alter their age in looks. And it showed how men, in this case, heterosexual men, do not admit to alter their perceived age, which I found very interesting. They either don't realize it or they don't admit it. So, for example, if you go and buy a skin tight t shirt because it makes you feel younger, you might not realize that that's why you bought it, or you might realize it and not want to say it. And I found, like, from this research, that the reason is hegemonic masculinity. So straight men have this innate masculinity in the patriarchal society we live in that kind of shields them from the negative associations of aging. So
huh.
for straight men, being younger does not mean being better. While for queer men and for women, there are tendencies to associate youth with desirability. And so being younger does seem to be better. And that's why people within these communities or within these groups actively look to alter their age. So yeah, that was something that I found very interesting, and like these differences that I was not expecting, because as you said, like you see these procedures and like these perceptions like in all cohorts, even in straight men, but they just wouldn't admit it, which I thought was
Yeah.
curious.
That is interesting. So, ageism and heterosexism often overlap in queer spaces. So, what are some ways that you've seen this dual stigma play out, and how does it impact mental health?
Sorry, you broke up a bit. Can you repeat the question?
Yeah. Um, Ageism and heterosexism often overlap in queer spaces. What are some ways that you've seen this dual stigma play out, and how does it impact mental health?
So I find this to be quite a paradox. Okay, queer people may experience discrimination in various degrees, and I think things are generally improving, but it is still very likely for a queer person to experience discrimination based on their sexuality. So, what do we do to try to avoid it? We try to stick together. So, we might go to a gay bar, or we might frequent queer community spaces to feel like we belong and to be in a space where we feel like we can be ourselves. But queer spaces should be liberating, but within these spaces, there are still oppressive hierarchies that play. So there are ageist beliefs that are often dominant, and beauty and youth, as kind of I was describing earlier, seem to be social capital within queer spaces, especially. So my research is mostly focused on queer men spaces, and that's what seems to be not necessarily the norm, but it's quite predominant. So this manifests through, I don't know, exclusion from nightlife, or there are reduced dating prospects, or older queer people are seen as past their prime in a way.
Hmm.
And the mental health consequences are real. I was looking at research, looking at the dual effect of ageism and sexuality-based stigma, and it reported that there are higher levels of loneliness in older queer people, and older queer men are twice as likely to experience depression and anxiety compared to heterosexual men. And specifically, this effect were emphasized for queer men compared to queer women, because of this continuous predominance of youth and beauty in these spaces. So as a young gay man myself, I'm often like in situations where you hear like comments about like aging described as being gross, or um, talking about older members of the community as predators, or sexualizing them as daddies. And I actually think tribes in the gay community, like daddy, twink, and so on, are especially detrimental because they represent yet another box where we feel like we need to force ourselves in. So it presents even more stereotypes within our own community of how we are supposed to be to fit that specific box.
I'd love to disagree with you, but I 100% know that it's true because I remember when I was younger, a younger gay man, and I remember seeing some of the older, like people who are like now my age, and I was like, ew, it was like gross. But when in reality, now I look back at it, and if I see um, queer men, gay men that are like your age and they're like, ew, it's like, oh, that's going to change. It will
Yeah,
eventually change when you get older. I think some other thing I think is you get older, you things aren't as strong. Like you just don't feel the same. And I just feel that unfortunately, there is a lot of tension in just, the community because of it, because we're so worried about um, being like accepted, even accepted within the community, not even necessarily accepted outside of the community, but also inside, because you have like trying to explain someone who is a heterosexual male or female, trying to explain, okay, well, there's so many different types of gay men. like we said, like you just referenced, like there's twink, there's daddy, there's a bear, there's so much, and yet so everyone is so different, and yet when we clash, it actually hurts. It hurts the community as a whole, because I've learned, and unfortunately, it has come with age and learning, is when you accept just everyone for who they are. I may not agree with what somebody that might, you know, consider themselves like that daddy role, or, you know, or they're only attracted to twinks or trunks or whatever. Who cares? That's their life. Let
Yeah.
them live their life. Because when you go, it happens in the straight community as well. Look how many, you know, women might want an older man, or vice versa. An older man, you know, might want to, or, you know, so it is what it is. Let people, for me,
Yeah.
it's just like, let people just live their lives. Even though, because it's going to affect your mental health, especially if you think too much about it. Um,
Yeah.
at
No, I
least
think
that's
I
how I
think
feel.
some labels are good. Like even sexual orientations, you can call them labels. Like I describe myself as a gay man, but all
Right.
it means is I'm attracted to other men.
Yeah.
I think what's wrong with labels or tribes is the policing of it, is um, trying to create like some sort of criteria or some sort of system to see if you are part of it or not. That's where it creates problems.
Yeah.
But some level of labels is actually empowering, like you said, with non-binary people or with people that have like various or like fluid sort of sexual orientations that are not strictly straight, bi, gay.
Mhm.
So I do think there is an element of benefit in labels. It's just it's the way we use them that sometimes is wrong rather than the label itself.
For sure. So, through your research, what have you noticed about how queer men form their sense of age identity, and how it's influenced by culture and social expectations?
So, as I was kind of saying earlier, I find quite funny how limited the research on queer men specifically is regarding self-perceived age, and that's why I started to research more cohorts about men in general, like the study about masculinity, to kind of make connections and links and try to kind of piece it all together and understand the queer experience. And so masculinity obviously is quite an interesting one, but another topic that I found very interesting is the fluidity of identity formation that I think we kind of touched briefly earlier. But I found so much research talking about how um, identity formation peaks in adolescence, and how after adolescence we tend to be more stable in our life. But there is a growing body of literature that is investigating how even through adulthood our identity keeps being renegotiated and formed. And I found this very interesting because it underscored this like fluidity and this tendency across different stages of life and different aspects of life as well. So it was knowing that identity was so fluid and forming your own identity was so fluid. And then I started to research more about sexual orientation. And there used to be kind of agreed consensus that sexual orientation is relatively stable throughout the life course. So if I identify as gay, I tend to identify as gay throughout my whole life. Um, but this is changing. There is newer research kind of exploring like fluid orientations and fluid sexuality, and most of the research is on women, but it is growing on men as well, of different sexual orientations as well, and how it's changing and becoming all more of a spectrum rather than fixed boxes. And looking at that and looking at identity formation in general and age identity as a fluid concept. That's what kind of inspired my research, like seeing how so many things that form who we are share these similarities in terms of how they are constructed. And I started to think, can there be an overlap? Can one influence the other? So like that's why I started to research age identity in the concept or in the context of queer man, because I just wanted to see, does the queer experience, does queer aging affect the way we perceive age? And it was interesting to see that there was already some research exploring it, but it was mostly on older queer men or older queer people. While I'm focusing my research more on younger demographic, under 55, because it's so underexplored. And again, we did talk about how there is this obsession with youth among queer men, and that's why most of the research is on older queer populations. But there is also an element of the human experience, regardless of sexuality, of youngism, or feeling like you are too young and trying to portray your age as older than what it actually is. And I wanted to see that in my research among queer men as well. So it was just interesting to see all the overlaps of identities. Sorry, sometimes I go on different tangents, but it is all kind of interconnected. And I just find it very interesting how it's so it's proper, like it's my back, like I have a background in psychology, and it's really just seeing how everything kind of ties together, even things that you would not necessarily
Wow.
think are connected.
That's really fascinating. And yeah, I'm sure it was very interesting. Just because of like, I get the older wanting to be young. I get that. And like that always feeling like you need to be young. I, f- I guess I've gotten to a point in my life. It's like, I'm good. I
It's
know what
good.
I am. This is who I am. And as I get older, because I've known so many people that, for instance, they color their hair, or they're doing something, or they might even wear certain types of, a foundational makeup to help, make them look a little bit younger. And it's, to me, it's like, this is who I am.
Yeah.
This is, and I mean, I feel very fortunate, like my partner and I've been like, he and I have been together 11 years. So at this point, I am pretty sure we're going to be together for the rest of our lives, just because I just have that, that's just that feeling that I have. And I think that if you're younger, it's going to be a little bit different. Obviously, I'm not saying you're going to want to find someone else, but I'm just saying once you've found someone, like I know I think you get a little bit more grounded once you've found a person to be in your life with, that you're
No,
maybe
I
not,
fully agree. Yeah.
that you maybe not be so worried about trying to be looking a certain age or acting a certain age. You just, because you've found that person who you're attracted to, who's attracted to you, that and most of the time it may not necessarily even, yes, probably some of it is, of course, looks, but I feel that it's probably also what's inside and what you've shared with them, and that's why you have that connection, and that's why you're probably not going to necessarily search out anything else
No,
or
I
anyone
fully
else.
understand. Obviously, it's not necessarily my area of research, but there is a kind of a human nature in terms of like finding mating partners. So I do think that once you're in a relationship, you are less affected by the expectations of others and the influences that you get from the outside world, because you're so grounded, as you say, like with your person. Um, it's a beautiful thing. Like I'm really into it. It would be good like to do research on that and see like the differences of age identity between partnered and non-partnered people.
For sure. So, as a queer researcher, you've used flexivity and autoethnography. I can't even say that. Eth- Um, uh huh. In your studies, how did your own experiences help you interpret your finding?
So I found this particularly interesting in my research because a substantial part of the background research that I did that led to my study um, found that a lot of the stereotypical representations of queer men were especially detrimental for mental health within the community. And obviously, because of my background in psychology, I'm really interested in the way behavior works and mental health and how it compares to consumption and the market, the business market. So these paired with the lack of research on queer men, which is incredibly disappointing, pushed me to pursue this project. So autoethnography is a research method that where researchers use their own experience to try to understand and describe specific social or cultural contexts. And for me, these helped me to kind of turn the lens inward. So my experience as a gay man, rather than being a bias or conflict of interest, if you will, um, it became like fundamental data through which I could understand and relate to the stories and the experiences that the participants gave. So that my study was used solicited diary research. So I collected diary entries from the participants, and it allowed for very rich data. People could just talk freely or write freely about their own experiences of age identity, and then through my experience, I would read them and kind of analyze them and sort them. And this is where reflexivity kind of played in, because as someone that has an academic background, and obviously um, I have a kind of an experience of queer spaces as well. I am young, but I don't like the life I lead is not necessarily in line with what would be expected by my chronological age. So I kind of relate to that kind of tiredness of aging that is kind of like an emotional tiredness of aging, and in a culture that often associates desirability with youth. So this is where I use reflexivity because I started to reflect on the moments I felt complicit in these kind of stereotypes and these standards and norms in our society, and the moments where, on the other hand, I kind of resisted them. And it was like through that kind of vulnerability that I was able to understand and have kind of deeper empathy with what the participants were saying. And I kind of related to what they were saying. And in that way, I could then analyze it and kind of group it in sort of dimensions of aging. I don't know if it makes sense. Sorry, sometimes it is a bit messy, but yeah.
No, it does actually. Um, so, from your perspective as both a researcher and a marketer, what role can media and brands play in reshaping narratives about queer men and aging?
So from a consumer perspective, I would say please work with real people. I think marketing is evolving to become more authentic and to include more authentic experiences and work with real people rather than relying on celebrity endorsements or like paid kind of campaigns. On top of being an academic and marketeer, I am obviously a consumer like everyone else. And when I see a product that is or should be targeted towards me, I can immediately tell if it was designed or promoted by someone that understands me and my needs and my experience as a consumer. Um, and from um, a professional perspective, let's say, I would say chronological age is very easy to use as a variable in segmentation, like to divide markets, but it does not necessarily represent real life, especially for specific groups. So, for example, queer men, from research, it is not always the case. Obviously, there are exceptions, but from research, queer men are portrayed as generally younger, like traits that are associated with younger demographics are often associated to queer people or queer men. So if you are promoting a product to queer men, you need to address these experiences. So even if the product is, let's say, an anti-age cream, so you're targeting like a chronologically older demographic within the queer market, you cannot use a tagline like designed for the aging man to fight wrinkles. Like it just would not resonate with this audience. So you need to use something that relates more to their experience. And obviously, we don't want to reinforce stereotypes that queer men are or need to be younger. Um, but as a marketeer, you need to be aware of what a certain community or what a certain group is experiencing to
Mhm.
target them.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think that, well, I mean, it's been going on forever. I know, um, especially I know with women, like there's certain, well, I'll just like for television in general, like they during the day there's soap operas that are on, and they always tend to focus on feminine hygiene products. Seem to always be something that is always thrown in during those, like, and it's interesting because I mean, I'm not saying they need to throw in anything regarding queer men and aging, even though I'm not saying that there aren't queer men watching those. Um, but it it's kind of fascinating that, for instance, you have something. I don't know. I agree with you. I think they need to really target more people that are the real people. But would you
Yeah.
feel comfortable? Let's say it is a. I can't think of a young I can only think of a queer athlete right now, but I can't think of a queer, like young queer, like actor. But would you think it's more effective to have someone who is a queer, just a queer man, or a queer, let's say it just happens to be an actor that happens to be an openly out gay male? Would, do you think, which one do you think would be more powerful? Just someone who's like a regular, just,
I think it depends on what you're trying to promote. There is there are benefits to both. It depends on the brand. You're like, is it now I'm getting very specific, but like if it's a more of a luxury kind of brand, you would expect them to have endorsements from um, celebrities, let's say, or
right? Yeah.
big influencers. But if you are looking at a brand that might be more down to earth, and that's what, and you also need to think about your own target audience. So if you are a luxury brand, you know that your target audience will be someone that values endorsements from high profile people. If you are a down to earth brand, you know that your target audience might value something more authentic. Um, so there is a skincare brand that I follow that is very famous for being very down to earth and trying to make things as accessible as possible. So their products are all based on just having like the best ingredients and no faff. That's it. Like they give you what they're trying to sell you, and that's it. There is nothing kind of trying to persuade you. And they did a campaign that I thought was very interesting. They rented a shop in London, I think, and they filled it. It was an empty shop. They just filled it with money, and they put on the window a sign saying, if we were to use an influencer campaign, this is how much money we would have had to use. And that was it. And they just posted like the photo of the store with this sign, and it just went viral on like everywhere on LinkedIn, social media. And it
Wow.
really played well for them because they knew their target audience. They know that their target audience does not care about high profile. They care about having a good product for an affordable price. And that's what they played on. And I feel like every brand, and this is just marketing, every brand needs to really listen to their audience because marketing is all customer centric. So when we talk about like queer man, again, I don't want to like group them as like just queer men. And that's exactly what my research is about like fragmenting the market and trying to understand what works for which people, and trying to create smaller groups because the tighter the market, the easier it is to target, but obviously the less people you're kind of targeting. So it is all about kind of balancing all these things out. It's about listening to the people that you want to target or that already follow you and trying to understand their experience. And if these people are queer men, you need to understand queer men and understand what they want and how they work. You'll have the queer men that want to look younger, feel younger, and you need to target them in that specific way. But you'll also have the queer men that are very comfortable with their own age and they don't need all those like marketing gimmicks, but you'll need to target them differently. So that's what I mean. And that's what my research is about. It's about looking at queer men not as one target segment, because that's what it used to be. And it used to be a really valuable target segment in marketing because in the past, obviously, things are changing, but it used to be like, in general, like high income, no kids, often double income if they're in a relationship, spending a lot on like beauty and luxury and things like that. But it is changing and it's becoming so much more nuanced, and experiencing are changing like in terms of what people want from life, and that applies to queer men as well. So we need to understand more like what's changing within the community to then target it more fragmentally.
I like it. It's very interesting. It's funny that you bring up the skincare thing because I think that for me personally, the skincare brand that I use, the reason I use it is they don't waste the money on the celebrity endorsements, whatever. They're using their funds, their money towards the research of getting the best ingredients to get the best product out there, to be it the best sustainable packaging, to whatever it might be, to that will help them target the brighter audience, instead
Yeah.
of, um, which there's absolutely nothing wrong with targeting, to, if you do it, I guess if you do it right. If you're niching down so specifically, you better have a pretty amazing marketing campaign
Yeah.
to be able to get the right people that you're wanting. But like you said, if your target audience is, you know, luxury and all your clients are luxury, user, they've been doing that, then that's totally fine. But if you're wanting to do a big broader, have a big broader audience, you're going to have to be pretty specific in your marketing to what you're really who you're wanting to get. Um,
No, absolutely. Yeah.
I mean, even for me, even in my coaching, like I very specifically say that I work with LGBTQ plus professionals and allies because, you know, first off, why not? And second, I think that because of the LGBTQ plus professionals are typically so marginalized, I wanted to be, someone being a part of that community to be able to help. And when I bring on just doing this podcast, I mean, I guarantee you there are people when they're listening to podcasts, they see, my logo that has, even it's called Empowered and Out. People may not necessarily what it means over in general, but then you see the rainbow colors, you see, and if you read just a little bit of bio, then you're like, okay, they might pass by. Yes, I want to target obviously our community, but on the other hand, I want everyone to listen because it does affect everyone, especially because of what I've been chatting about and who I've been fortunate enough to bring on as guests, like yourself. Like there's definitely topics that people maybe not really think about. And I think
Yeah.
when I market it correctly for myself and for, even how I put it out there on LinkedIn, I mean, I will, I feel very humbled. I got over 111 people like comments on the post about wanting to bring people onto my podcast and over 14,000 impressions on LinkedIn, which to me blows my mind still to this day. I'm like, how did I get that many people viewing this? But um, thank you for everyone that did. And I'm thankful for everyone who's come on so far and then who's going to be coming on in the future because our voices are strong and they're important. And every type of subject that's brought up is important for all of us to hear. Um,
No, absolutely. Yeah.
so for someone listening who feels pressured by the age norms in queer culture, what's one piece of advice or mindset shift that you'd offer?
My main advice, and it may sound really banal, but it's do what makes you happy. It's not easy. Obviously, this is my field of research, and I myself am often thinking or worrying about like what other think or how they're perceiving me. So it's not easy. It's a process, but at the end of the day, like we only have ourselves, and we need to be authentic with ourselves. So the beauty of this fluid identity that I've been talking about is that we are not just this or only that. Like we are both, and it's really up to us to kind of shape and negotiate and kind of merge our identities based on the context we're in, based on the people that are around us, or even just based on our mood. And with this, I don't mean that we should not fight the stereotypes and the norms that are out there that shape these identities as well. Um, Actually, it is only by like listening to ourselves and trying to portray the most authentic version of ourselves as we can, that we can fight these stereotypes. They a certain level of influence will always be there. Nothing is fully innate or biological, and nothing is fully socially driven. So we will always have this mixture of nature and nurture, but let's be as authentic as we can, and let's make sure that our voices and our stories are heard, because that's how we fight the norms that portray a community that does not represent us. And my research, for example, it is thanks to the support that I got from other queer men that took part in my research that I was able to write my paper and my study. But even then, like, I really struggle to find participants. So if you ever think you want to get involved somehow, please do. There's so many opportunities out there, some small, some big. You can take part in studies, you can take part in podcasts. You can really do it, and you can really help raise our profile and kind of share our voices, our real voices, and not the voices that for years and years were put over us, like all the representations that were supposed to represent us and didn't. Let's kind of fight those by being ourselves.
I love that. I can feel your passion, like for what I can tell that you love what you've, like what you do, what you've done, what, like, especially with this research, with the research. I mean, um, I hope it's coming across to the listeners, because I can feel it. And I mean, I can see it because I can see you, but I can see it like in
Yeah,
how
I'm
you're
very
presenting it.
Italian.
Nothing wrong with that. Um, so those were all the fun, serious questions. I wouldn't say fun. Those were all the kind of the more thinking questions. But these, I want to ask you some just kind of off the cuff, just having fun. Just, just try to think of just whatever comes to mind first. I don't want you to have to think too much. I've had a few guests on that kind of go silent when they're trying to
Okay.
think. And so just because they're like, oh my gosh, that's hard. I don't know what to think. So, um, if you could instantly relive 1 year of your life just for fun, not to change anything, which year would it be and why?
That's very interesting. I would relive the year that has just passed, I think. Um, it's been a very weird year. I'm doing my master's at the moment, while I am working, and I also got married this year. So it's been, and also I relocated for my master's, and I'm relocating again. So it's been very intense, and everything was very full on. I have like two part-time jobs, obviously Mava, my freelance agency. I had a full-time master's planning the wedding, and then straight after the wedding, I went through with my research. So I had like not a single minute to breathe. So the reason why I would like to relive it is to remind myself that I will get there, because I did get here eventually, and it did not feel like that throughout.
Mhm.
It's been a year. That's the only way I can put it. It's been a year. I've loved it. Like I've had so many experiences that I've loved, and obviously I got married. But just so many things. Even the research itself, like it felt so intense when I started, like just so big and so unsurmountable. But now that I'm almost done with it, it's so satisfying to see it all there, and to see that I actually did something that is gonna have some sort of change, even if small, that contributed somehow. So yeah, I would like to relive that. And also, I'm at a point in my life, like I'm in my mid 20s now. So I'm at a point in my life where I look back and I cringe a bit at the younger self. So maybe I wouldn't relive that.
Well, congratulations on getting married. That's awesome.
Thank you.
And that's very interesting. I like how you explain that, because some people would be like, I mean, because honestly, it does sound a little bit chaotic, but I think that it's not necessarily a bad thing. You know, you get to, like you said, you get to enjoy what you got to experience, and and you had a
Yeah,
huge moment in your life. Obviously, getting married is it's something that hopefully not a lot of people experience more than once, because it really was designed. I kind of feel like it should be maybe a one time thing, but I also feel that when you find that right person, um, it's what's meant to be. So, um, if you could, oh, sorry, I was about to ask you the exact same question. um, what's one piece of bad advice about aging in the queer community that always makes you laugh?
I don't know. What do you mean by bad advice? Oh no, I
Gosh.
have it. I have it. I have it.
Okay, good.
I feel like so many people, because a lot of people, okay, so we all come out at different stages of our lives. And I feel like a lot of gay people or queer people experience kind of sort of a rebirth when they come out, especially if they come out like later in life and they live quite a closeted experience. So I came out quite young and I never really had substantial issues, but I had so many people like in my life that would talk about how they had to kind of make up for lost time or things like that. And I feel like that's an incredibly bad piece of advice because all your experience, even the closeted one, even like the negative experiences are part of your life and you shouldn't just feel like it was wasted time. I feel like everything we go through in life shapes who we are and we will get like at different points in our life ups and downs, but wherever we are, that's all shaped by the experience of our past. So
Mhm.
whatever your experience was, and obviously there are different levels, but everything brought you to where you are now. And if you're not where you want to be, use where you are now as a push to get where you want to be, because we should appreciate kind of everything that happens in our life, most things that happen in our lives because they do make who we are. And it goes all back to the whole identity formation thing, but it's true. And I really stick by it. And I do think about it quite often, like when I'm in some moments that I don't feel particularly happy.
That is such a mature, older way to think. And I have to say that because looking back, there's definitely things that I was like, oh my gosh, why did I do this? Why did I do this? But like you said it perfectly. It shapes who you are. Like we change and we grow as people because of things that happen to us, either good or bad. And I think that if we don't get to go through those experiences, uh, as simple as something as is even getting married, it's if we don't have something, it's a very simple experience. Even going maybe to a gay bar for the first time, I mean, I remember, oh my gosh, I remember my first time. That was one of the most nerve-wracking, craziest thing experiences of my life. But you know what, it brought me to where I am today. Like I am who I am because of the experiences that I lived. And good or bad, I mean, there's definitely not
Yeah,
every experience we have is not going to be great. It's fortunate, we all have different, coming out stories. Everyone does, either younger or older or whatever that might be. And I think that's also how we grow. That's how we shape our lives. So,
absolutely.
okay. So, what's the most hilariously outdated gay media stereotype about age that you've seen on TV or in a movie?
I would say, I don't know if it's about age, but the whole obsession with shopping and pink and things like that that you see so often in representations of gay man, but I have to say I do like pink. But I hate shopping. But there are just, I think, like femininity in general, like the stereotype with femininity, and I think because I came out quite young, and I kind of wanted to belong within the gay community when I was quite young, and growing up, obviously, that's where a lot of the whole identity formation happens. But I feel like I was really influenced by that. And I'm from a small town outside of Milan, and there weren't like many gay people when I was growing up. So all the representations and all the ideas that I had about being gay was from TV and media. So I think I grew up relatively effeminate, which is not bad, but I think it's because of all these like representations. And I find it so funny now that if I see a gay man or like someone that I know is gay that is not effeminate, I'm always thinking like, is he gay? Which is so bad. Like it's such a bad bias to have, but it is shaped by like all these representations and all these expectations of gay men to be a certain way.
It's funny that you say that because I brought this up a few times with different interviews with people that when I was, I mean, it's been a while, but at one point I worked in a restaurant and there were three of us that happened to be, we were three openly gay men that worked in the restaurant. And I was told that I couldn't be gay because the other two gay guys that I worked with happened to do drag. They performed in drag. And I was like, because I didn't have, because I wasn't, because I didn't do drag, I couldn't be gay. And I thought that was so funny because it's like, well, that's a stereotype, number one. Number two, I don't have anything wrong with people doing drag. Good for them that they want to do that. But you might want to open your eyes because that's not all how the gay community, not how all gay men are. I mean, I've known
Yeah.
many gay men, like we talked about it earlier, like I mean, you have daddies, you have bears, you have twunks, you have twinks, you have the whole group of many different people. Um you have people who do sports, which that's a whole stereotype in itself that, oh, if you're gay, you can't do sports or you can't be into sports. Well, that's ridiculous. I mean, one of now the most famous out gay men was U.S. Olympic diver Greg Louganis, but now you have British diver Tom Daley. You know, you have, so it's just like, yeah, you can like these things,
Yeah.
like get rid of the stereotypes because gay men are just as unique and different as any straight male, at least from my opinion. Um,
No, for real.
oh,
Like at the end of the day, we're all people, and like being
exactly.
gay is just one part of who we are. It doesn't determine everything. So obviously, we evolve and develop as people, like any other person.
All right, one last question for you, and then we'll end this thing out. So, if Queer Time had a signature cocktail, what would you call it, and what's in it?
Okay, sorry. Queer. Can you define queer time? Like, what do you mean?
I guess I would say like maybe like an older gay male, like an
Okay.
older like.
I don't know. No, you really caught me with this one. I really don't know. I would say, okay, I don't know about a name, but I would say no, because that's gonna end up in a stereotype. Can I refuse to answer?
um, I'll let you like yeah. I mean,
Okay, because
I can
I would
think.
just pick things. I don't know.
I guess what's funny to me is I guess as I've gotten older, I will admit I am one of the few of my friends who does not drink this drink, but I know a lot of older gay men, sorry, friends out there, that a lot of them go to, um, they'll do an old fashioned.
Hmm.
I can't stand old fashions because I don't like brown liquors. So that's just not, I can't, for me, I just can't stand the taste. It's just gross and disgusting to me. But I feel like that's a good or bad, I feel that's a good representation of an older, probably
I get the,
female.
but also I'm based in the UK, so here people just go for
True.
like they do cocktails, but they would just go for a pint, really. Uh,
Yeah. See, that's a little bit, yeah. Also,
Cultural differences. Oh yeah,
also espresso martinis seem to be I mean, now I do like those, but I like coffee. So like, and I know that's a whole different like British thing. Like, it seems like tea is more prevalent than coffee. We drink a lot of coffee over
yeah.
here in the US. So,
It is
uh,
becoming more prevalent here as well, but yeah.
well, that's good. So uh, it's not actually good. It's a very bad addiction that I have of coffee. So, what key piece of advice or actionable tip can you leave our listeners today after all that we've said?
I would say key piece of advice, be authentic, be yourself, and don't stress too much about being a human being. We all go through things, we all go through changes, and it's all completely normal. And just remind yourself that wherever you are is where you're supposed to be in this moment in time. This is getting a bit philosophical, but I do believe that. And that's it, really. That's all I can think of. And we all age anyway, so let's not stereotype aging because we all get there.
Exactly. Well, that was great. I enjoyed that. That was very, it's true at some point. Like yeah, we do. We age. It's part of life. It's what's going to happen. Um, I just want to thank you so much, Manuel, for, today, for sharing your insights. I think this conversation that we had is such an important reminder that the stories that were told about aging, and even who were, allowed to be at certain ages, are not the full truth. We have the power to challenge those narratives and define our identities on our own terms. And I thank you for the research that you've done. I'm excited. I know you and I chatted. You sent me a message about it. How things had to be changed a little bit for what we were chatting about today. But you know what? I'm excited to hear, to see when your research is published. I'm just to see the reaction that it gets. So if you'd like to connect with Manuel, check out his website. That will be on the show notes, and you can find him on LinkedIn. He's always open to new collaborations and connections. If today's conversation that we had resonated with you, don't keep it to yourself. Share this episode with a friend or post it. Post your takeaways online and tag us. It's the best way to keep building our community with every queer person. Um, we can thrive at every age. So until next time, stay empowered, stay out, and keep building the life and career that reflects all of who you are. Thanks again.